My dad called my $50,000 tech startup too risky, then gave my brother $200,000 and a Jaguar for his failed projects. When my company hit 1.5 million users, they demanded I sell it to save the family name. In our house, risk was only a problem when I was the one bringing it up. When I asked for help funding my tech startup, just $50,000 to get my prototype out of the garage and into investors' hands, my dad rubbed his temples like I had asked him for a kidney. He told me it was too risky. He told me that was not how business worked. He told me I could not just throw money at ideas. He told me to be grateful for what I had. That would have been easier to swallow if he had said it to everyone. But when my brother Luke wanted a fourth chance at his luxury brand consulting venture, Dad wired him $200,000 and handed him the keys to a brand new Jaguar with red leather seats. He said you had to spend money to make money. That time, he actually winked like he was dropping wisdom from the heavens. I was not even shocked by then. Luke had always been the favorite. If I was the spare tire in the family, he was the gold-plated steering wheel. Growing up, he failed at everything, loudly, and got applauded for having the guts to try. I built apps in my bedroom, coded until my fingers ached, and got told to go rake the lawn. They used to call me Garage Boy. Luke came up with that one. Mom laughed so hard she choked on her wine the first time he said it. Dad called it harmless sibling teasing. Luke had a gift for that, turning insults into jokes, polished enough to look innocent. He would pass me in the hallway, smirk in his $1,000 hoodie, and whisper it under his breath. Garage Boy. Still trying to invent the next Facebook, in your pajamas, I kept building anyway. By the time I graduated high school, I had already launched 2 small platforms. One was for campus tutoring, the other was for freelance video editors. Neither of them was huge, but they made a few $1,000s and kept my dream alive. I applied to colleges, but instead of chasing degrees, I wanted to chase product-market fit. I wanted to build something real, something scalable. My idea was simple, at least on paper. It was a real-time AI-based collaboration tool that let creators and editors work across time zones, with automated sync, script tagging, and version tracking. Basically, it was Google Docs for video, but better. I spent a year prototyping it. I picked up freelance back-end gigs, slept under my desk, and lived on caffeine and peanut butter packets. I demoed the product to a few content creators, and the early feedback was solid. I was not asking my parents to bet blindly on me. I was asking for runway. Dad told me I was not ready. He said this was not Shark Tank. He asked me what would happen if it failed. I almost laughed. Failed like Luke's last 3 ventures: the food truck, the crypto newsletter, the failed Kickstarter for ergonomic wine openers. Luke had business cards printed before he had a plan. I had a working prototype and a waiting list of beta testers. But somehow I was too risky. Dad did not even read my pitch deck. That night, I lay awake in my old bedroom, the same one with peeling wallpaper and Ethernet cables coiled like vines around my desk. I kept refreshing my inbox, hoping for some kind of miracle. Instead, I heard Luke roll up in the driveway, his new Jaguar purring like a spoiled cat. And I heard Dad laughing from the porch. I did not cry. I packed my bag and left before sunrise. No drama, no shouting, just silence. The same silence I had gotten my whole life. I crashed on my friend Jeremy's couch downtown. It was not exactly ideal, but his place had Wi-Fi, decent coffee, and something my parents' house never did: support. Jeremy's family ran a tiny printing business, and they let me set up shop in their unused back office. It was a dusty corner with a squeaky chair and a heater that clanged like it had war flashbacks. It was perfect. For the next 3 months, I worked like a man possessed. I emailed venture capitalists. I cold DM'd angel investors on LinkedIn. I showed up to demo days in coffee-stained hoodies with frayed nerves. Every no made me hungrier. Every ignored pitch made the next one sharper. Then, finally, I got my break. A niche tech accelerator offered me a spot in their spring cohort. They did not hand out checks right away, but they gave me something better: mentorship, exposure, and desk space next to other people who were just as sleep-deprived and obsessed as I was. I called Dad that night. I thought maybe he would be proud. Maybe he would finally say, "Good job, son." He did not pick up. 2 hours later, Mom texted me back and said my father was at dinner with Luke and that she would tell him I called. Right, of course. That was when it clicked. They were not waiting for me to succeed. They were waiting for me to fail so they could say they told me so. But that was not what happened. 6 months into the accelerator program, everything changed. I was still eating instant noodles for breakfast and answering emails with hands that shook from too much caffeine. But for the first time in my life, people were listening. The startup, now called Syncly, had traction. Beta testers were actually using it instead of just signing up and ghosting. One editor used it for a YouTube documentary and messaged me that it had saved his team 40 hours in revisions. He asked how something like this did not already exist. That one message meant more to me than my parents would ever understand. I printed it out and pinned it to the wall above my tiny desk like it was a diploma. Then came the TechCrunch article. One of the mentors at the accelerator casually forwarded my product demo to a journalist he knew. I did not think anything would come of it, but suddenly I was getting interview requests. Podcasts were asking me to come on as a guest. YouTubers were sliding into my DMs asking for early access. The headline called me a 22-year-old founder reinventing video collaboration, and it described the journey from garage to growth. I did not cry, but I definitely sent the link to my mom. No response, not even a wow, just silence. I pictured her reading it next to Luke while both of them rolled their eyes. I could practically hear her saying anyone could get into TechCrunch these days, and that it was probably all paid promotion now. Meanwhile, Luke's Instagram had gone dark. Gone were the rise and grind selfies, the briefcase photos, the car shots, the flashy coffee table setups with business books he clearly never read, and the reels where he showed off productivity hacks while filming himself napping. I heard through Jeremy, whose cousin worked at a local car wash, that Luke had been spotted begging the manager for a part-time job, with the Jaguar still parked outside. That could not have been a fun conversation. It turned out his latest luxury concierge startup had collapsed in flames after an influencer called him out for stealing her itinerary package and reselling it. Lawsuits were pending. Investors were gone. The money had burned out in under 9 months. Apparently, you cannot run a company on Pinterest boards and vibes. I did not say a word. Not to him, not to my parents. I just built. Another 6 months passed, and Syncly got its first seed round, a clean $750,000 from a trio of angel investors who believed in the platform. I was still living in Jeremy's family's back office. I was still rotating through the same 3 hoodies. But suddenly, I had something I had never had before: leverage. And the universe loves irony, because that same week, my phone rang. It was Dad. Not a text, not a voicemail, a full-on phone call, as if he had forgotten we had barely spoken since he ghosted my first funding request. I let it ring twice, then picked up. His voice was calm and almost rehearsed. He said he just wanted to congratulate me. He said he and Mom had seen the article, and she had said I had really been working hard. I did not say anything. I wanted to see where it was going. Then he told me they were wondering if I had time to stop by. Just family stuff, he said. Family stuff. That was rich. I agreed more out of curiosity than anything. When I pulled into their driveway 2 days later, the first thing I noticed was the absence of the Jaguar. Then I saw Luke sitting on the porch, scrolling through his cracked phone, with the same defeated posture he used to laugh at me for. The only thing missing was the gold chain. I guessed that had gone first. Dad stepped outside with forced warmth and called me son, a word he had not used for me in years. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I had once pitched him my startup and been told to mow the lawn instead. But now the air was different. Mom was fidgety. Luke would not make eye contact. Dad cleared his throat like he was about to give a TED Talk. He said Luke was going through a rough patch. That was the understatement of the century. Then he said they had been thinking. Since my company was doing well, now really well, maybe it was time to bring things back together. Unite the family. I narrowed my eyes. Mom jumped in and said he meant maybe I could sell part of the company or bring Luke in. Bring Luke in, I asked it deadpan, because I wanted to hear them say it out loud. Dad rushed to explain that it would just be for optics to show that the family was united, that we built things together for the family name. There it was, the family name. Not once had they cared when I was drowning in code and ramen noodles. Not once did they call when I was rejected by 22 investors. But now that I had leverage, now that there was something to lose, suddenly we were the Corbin family empire. I looked over at Luke. He was still avoiding my eyes. He was not even embarrassed. He just looked entitled, like this was something owed to him. I asked if I understood correctly. They wanted me to sell part of my company to make Luke look good. They wanted me to protect a family name that had never protected me. Dad straightened and told me it was not about me. He said it was about unity. I stood up calmly and politely turned toward the door and told them I thought we were done. Then I looked at Luke and told him that maybe next time he should try actually building something before asking someone else to sell theirs. I walked out. I did not slam the door. I did not yell. I just walked. The silence behind me was perfect. 3 days after I walked out of my parents' house, I got a Google alert with my name in it. At first I thought another tech blog had picked up the seed round news. But no, this was something else entirely. A Reddit thread had popped up with a title about an entitled tech bro refusing to help his bankrupt brother and ruining his family. The username was brand new. The writing style was familiar. The details were suspiciously accurate. I scrolled through the thread, reading every line like I was watching a car crash in slow motion. It said my brother had gotten lucky with some AI tool and now thought he was better than everyone else. It said my parents were heartbroken. It said they had raised us to support each other, but apparently, money changed people. There were even blurry photos of me walking out of my parents' house from behind. Luke had posted them. And the kicker was his sign-off. He said he was not asking for hate. He just wanted people to know how cold the tech world could be. The tech world. He had sold itinerary templates stolen off Pinterest. Within hours, the post had been reposted across 3 startup forums. One venture capitalist I had pitched before even commented that it sounded like someone was mad his little brother would not Venmo him $1 million. I did not reply, but that night I got a very polite Slack message from my lead investor. He had seen some stuff floating online and told me to let him know if I wanted help drafting a response. He said they knew the truth. I replied simply that I appreciated it, that there was no need to feed trolls, and that I was focused on building. Professional. Calm. Inside, I was fuming. Luke was not just petty. He was dangerous. He did not care if he scorched the entire house as long as I looked bad in the smoke. But karma moves fast because something else popped up on my radar that same week. It was an email from an old family acquaintance, Mr. Adler, a retired angel investor Dad used to golf with. He had always treated me like I was invisible growing up. The subject line mentioned my work with Sinclair. I braced myself, but the message surprised me. He said he had seen my name come up recently and wanted to say the work was impressive. He said he had no idea I had built something so solid and that he would love to talk. It turned out Adler had left the golf course and quietly started funding creator-focused tools. He also hated messy drama, especially when his former golf buddy's son was launching Reddit exposés like a soap opera intern. We had coffee. He liked what he saw, and just like that, he joined our next round. Luke's smear campaign accidentally landed me an investor. Life is funny like that. Meanwhile, Luke was spiraling. I did not follow him, but people sent me updates, screenshots, snippets from his close friends' Instagram stories. One post said loyalty meant nothing these days, but he was going to bounce back harder, complete with a rise again hashtag. The next day he posted that he needed a co-founder for a fresh idea and told people to DM him if they had hustle. He did not need a co-founder. He needed a financial advisor and an app. A week later, I got a text from Mom. Just 3 words. Please call me. I did not. Instead, I poured myself a coffee, slipped on my headphones, and jumped into another product call with my dev team. We were shipping something new, something better. And for the first time in my life, I was not chasing their approval anymore. They were chasing mine. 2 weeks later, I got a formal invitation. Not an email, not a text. A printed letter in an envelope hand-delivered by Luke. He showed up at my office door in a wrinkled button-down, holding a white envelope like it was either an olive branch or a lawsuit. He said there would be a family dinner and that Dad wanted to talk. Everyone would be there. I stared at the envelope and asked if there was going to be a PowerPoint this time. He did not laugh. He just shrugged and walked off. Inside the envelope, they had written that I was invited to dinner at the house. No drama, no pressure, just a conversation. No drama from the people who launched a smear campaign and subtweeted me in real life. Sure, I went. Not because I wanted closure, but because part of me still wanted to see exactly how far they would go. When I arrived, the dining table was set like it was Thanksgiving. Candles, wine, napkins folded like swans. Luke sat at one end, looking like a guy who had just Googled humble outfit ideas. Mom smiled too wide. Dad opened by telling me I looked well, really thriving, son. I had not even sat down yet. I told him to get to it. Dad coughed awkwardly and said they had been thinking about legacy. There it was again. Legacy. Family name. Unity. All code for they had messed up and would really like a bailout now. Dad cleared his throat and gestured toward Luke. He said my brother had made mistakes, sure, but he had vision. I cut him off and finished the thought for him. They thought that if I put Luke's name on my company, the media would stop calling him a joke. Silence. Mom jumped in and said it was not about the company, it was about healing. She said the family had been fractured for too long. I repeated the word healing like it was something strange and foreign. Right after Luke tried to blowtorch my reputation on the internet, Luke finally spoke and said it had not been personal. He had just been mad and desperate. I told him that made it so much better and that he should have added a "forgive me bro" hashtag. Dad tried to regain control. He said they wanted to propose something, a partnership. I would sell a majority stake to a firm they had vetted. I actually choked. They wanted me to sell my company. Dad quickly said not all of it, just enough to bring in capital and real business minds. He said it would help clean the slate and rebuild our name. Our name. This man could not even remember the name of my product a year earlier. Now he wanted to rebrand my life's work into a family-friendly redemption arc. I set my glass down and told them I had one question. Where were they when I asked for help? Where were they when I begged Dad to read my pitch deck? Where were they when I was sleeping on Jeremy's floor, eating expired protein bars, and pitching investors who ghosted me for months? No one spoke. I told them that now they wanted me to hand over control of the one thing I had built so they could erase their son's mistakes and save face at the country club. Mom looked like she wanted to cry. Luke looked like he already had. But I was not angry anymore. I was not even sad. I was done. I stood up and told them that if legacy was so important, they should start their own company and rebuild their own name. I had. Dad's voice cracked when he told me to be reasonable and said I would regret this. I paused at the doorway and calmly told him no. He would regret not believing in me when it actually mattered. Then I left. No swan napkin, no goodbye hug. Just a quiet walk back to my car with my heart pounding. Not from rage this time, but from relief. The chapter was closing, and I was writing the ending. The next morning, Mom texted me. She said they had not meant to hurt me. She said I was just so different now and hard to reach. I did not reply. Not because I was angry, not anymore. I did not reply because I finally understood something. They were not trying to fix the family. They were trying to rewrite the story. They wanted Luke to be the misunderstood visionary. They wanted Dad to be the wise patriarch who knew when to step in. They wanted me to be the resentful son who got lucky and forgot his roots. But roots do not matter if the soil was poisoned from the beginning. That same week, my company launched a new update. Nothing flashy, Just better workflow tools, tighter UX, and smoother sync. But it blew up anyway. A viral TikTok review by a content creator with 6 million followers called it the most underrated tool his team had ever used. Overnight, our user base doubled. 2 days later, Wired emailed asking for an interview. My name was finally circulating in places my family could not control and could not spin. So, of course, Luke did what Luke does best. He posted an apology video. He filmed it in his car, parked somewhere suspiciously close to my office, looking disheveled and raw. The caption said it was time to take accountability. He said he had messed up. He said he had let jealousy win. But he would always love his brother, and he hoped one day we could work together. It had all the classics. Dramatic piano music, fake sniffles, even a cut midway through where he clearly checked a script. It got 11,000 views. But what really caught attention was the comments. It turned out the internet did not like manipulative growth arcs from guys who tried to cancel their own brothers. Someone found the Reddit thread Luke had made. Someone else posted the blurry photos he had taken. Someone else dug up old tweets where Luke had made fun of nerd culture and tech bros 5 months before I closed my seed round. Within 48 hours, Luke's apology was a meme. Even funnier, The Verge ran a piece on sibling rivalry in tech and used our story as the opener. They did not name Luke directly, but the description was unmistakable. It mentioned one founder building an app in a garage while his family mocked him. Then watching his brother's internet drama ironically boost the platform's visibility. When I saw that line, I laughed so hard I had to mute my Zoom call. But the best part was the investor Dad had tried to get me to sell to. They emailed me not to buy Syncly, but to ask if I wanted to advise their media division on digital tool sets. They said my brother had reached out first, but after due diligence, they preferred me. Dad must have loved that one. Luke stopped posting for a while. The silence was loud. As for my parents, they tried to regroup. Mom sent messages asking if we could talk privately and clear the air. Dad went with a classic. He told me I was still their son, but this was not how families behaved. I stared at that text for a long time, not in anger, just amazement. Because after everything, the rejections, the favoritism, the gaslighting, they still believed I was the problem. I drafted a reply, then deleted it. Instead, I took a screenshot of the article from The Verge, the one with the garage founder story, and texted it to them. No words, just the image. 10 minutes later, I got a single text from Dad. He said they would never ask me for anything again. That was the first time he had ever kept a promise. Then I was invited to speak at a local startup summit. It was one of those half-tech, half-investor events filled with overly enthusiastic college kids and older guys in Patagonia vests pretending to understand TikTok. The panel title was about building in the dark, about founders who were ignored before they made it. I did not hesitate. I knew exactly what I would say. The event was held in a huge converted warehouse. Edison bulbs hung everywhere. Pop-up espresso carts lined the walls. People wore company t-shirts like battle armor. I brought my usual black hoodie with no logo. Let them guess. I was last on the speaker lineup, which was perfect. The crowd was already warmed up by stories about making $10 million by 25, but feeling empty inside, and founders whose dogs had inspired their apps. When I stepped on stage, I did not bring notes. I brought one slide. It was a grainy photo, a wide shot of my old desk in Jeremy's family's back office. Wires, cold pizza, a stained hoodie on the chair, a cracked monitor. A whiteboard behind me with the words, "Version 2, don't crash this time," written in permanent marker. The audience chuckled. I started by telling them that was my world. No seed funding, no family board members, no one printing co-founder on a hoodie for me, just caffeine desperation and a feature request list that looked like a ransom note. People laughed. Then I leaned forward. I told them I had asked for help once, just $50,000. I was told it was too risky. That same month, my brother got $200,000 for his 5th failed project and a Jaguar. True story. The audience went silent. I told them my success did not come despite being ignored. It came because of it. When no one shows up, you learn how to build your own chair at the table. And if you are smart, you install ejector seats. That line landed like a mic drop. And that was when I saw him in the back row trying to be subtle. My dad. He sat stiffly, with his arms folded and his face unreadable. No Luke, just him. Of course. I kept going like I had not seen him. I told the room that I was never the favorite. I was the fallback. The maybe he will figure something out eventually kid. But the thing about black sheep is that we get tired of the barn. So we build our own fences, our own house, and eventually, our own empire. The applause hit hard. I clicked to the next slide, a clean, high-resolution screenshot of the Syncly dashboard showing 1.3 million active users. I told them this was what risk looked like now. The applause grew louder. I ended the talk and left the stage quickly. People stood and clapped. A few asked for photos. I kept moving straight toward the back exit, but of course, he followed. Dad called my name and I stopped. He was out of breath, his tie loose, his face pale. He said he did not know I was speaking. He lied. I just nodded and asked if he liked the slide. He flinched. Then he said he had not realized I felt that way. His voice was softer than I remembered. I told him he had not realized anything. He had been too busy sponsoring the Golden Child while I was coding at 3 in the morning in a janitor closet. He tried to regroup and said they had wanted the best for both of us. I told him no. They had wanted the best from me and for Luke. He looked down and said I had made my point. I smiled and told him no, the market had made my point. Then I left him standing there, surrounded by startup kids taking selfies, screen showing my platform stats, and a single chair on stage labeled Founder, empty now, but with no one questioning who had filled it. A week after the summit, everything felt lighter. Investors were doubling down. Syncly had gone from steady to wildfire. Our user numbers ticked past 1.5 million like it was nothing. I had meetings with creators, post-production studios, and even a streaming platform that wanted to integrate our tool. I was living in a place with real sunlight and actual walls that were not made of plywood. I had a team of 14 who actually cared. No one asked about my brother. No one called me the backup plan. It was peaceful. Until Mom showed up. Not a text, not a call. She physically showed up at my office. My assistant came in looking nervous and told me there was someone there who said she was my mom. I blinked and asked if she had actually said that out loud. My assistant nodded. I sighed and told her to let Mom in. Mom walked in like she had not ghosted me for 2 years. Like she had not co-signed the too risky comment. Like she had not clapped when Luke showed off his Jaguar. She said my name with a trembling voice, like she had been rehearsing it, and asked if we could talk. I nodded mostly because my team was watching through the glass like it was a Netflix drama. We sat in my office. She looked around like she was inside a spaceship. She said it was incredible. She said I had really built something. I told her I had, without any help. She swallowed and said she knew. She said she regretted a lot. I stayed quiet. Then she leaned forward and said Dad was struggling. His business connections were drying up. People were talking. My summit speech had hurt his standing. She said people looked at him differently now. My heart did not even skip. I told her, good. Her mouth opened, stunned. She said she knew he had been wrong about a lot, but we were family, and our name mattered. There it was again, the name. I cut her off. She paused. I stood up and walked to the window. I asked if she wanted me to fix a reputation they destroyed while trying to protect Luke's. She began to protest, but I held up a hand. I told her she had chosen to believe in his fake companies. She had watched me work in silence, scraping by, and said nothing because she did not think I would make it. She snapped that they did not think I would make it, then immediately regretted saying it. I told her I understood. She stood, too desperate now, and said they just needed something to buy time. Dad was trying to refinance the house. If I could vouch for them, it would help. I asked if she meant signing something. She said yes, just my name, just to help the process. I turned around slowly. They wanted me to co-sign a loan to protect a reputation I had never benefited from. She said nothing. I walked to my desk and picked up a framed photo. It was not of my family. It was my team after a product launch, all of us surrounded by pizza boxes, hoodies, and big, dumb grins. I set it down and tapped the frame. I told her this was my family now. Her face cracked. Then she tried one more time. She said Luke had been through a lot and that he was not asking for anything himself. She said he was ashamed. I stared at her. He was ashamed enough to show up in a parking lot for a selfie apology, but not ashamed enough to apologize to me directly. She had no answer. I told her I would send her back with one thing, a number. She looked up hopeful. I said, 0. She blinked. I repeated it. $0, 0 favors, 0 more conversations about legacy, 0 tolerance for guilt. Then I walked to the door and opened it. She did not move at first. I nodded toward the hallway. Finally, she left. She did not cry. She did not slam the door. She just left. As she walked past the desks outside, one of my developers looked up from her laptop and whispered, asking if that had been my mom. I smiled and said it depended who was asking. Then I sat back at my desk, surrounded by screens, showing growth charts, user dashboards, and my own name, finally associated with something I had built. No cosigner required. I thought that was the end. Honestly, I did. I figured that after the summit, after Mom left the office without so much as a brochure, after Luke's public flop and their social circle going radio silent, they would just disappear. But then came one last email. Not from Mom, not from Dad, not even from Luke. It was from their old lawyer, the same one who handled Dad's company filings and drafted the paperwork when Luke was handed that $200,000 startup fund with no equity required. The subject line said it was a request for consideration about the family estate. I opened it. The lawyer addressed me formally and said my parents would like to request a meeting to discuss the possibility of restructuring shared assets, namely the original family home and the associated land. Given my current financial position and their recent difficulties, they believed I might be in a unique position to preserve the family estate and uphold the Holloway legacy. I closed the laptop. It was almost poetic. The house they would not let me live in after high school. The land they swore would always belong to Luke. Now with Dad's credit wrecked and refinancing denied, they were looking to hand me the deed as long as I kept the name on it. I did not reply, not immediately. Instead, I called a friend of mine named Jamie, who ran a firm that handled distressed property acquisitions. I gave her the address. She called me back in 15 minutes and told me it was a steal. I told her to buy it. 2 weeks later, I stood in the foyer of that same house, the one where I had been told I was not worth the risk, not serious enough, not the golden one. It was empty now. The walls still had the family photos, Luke's graduation, Luke's first car, Luke holding the family dog. Not a single one of me. That afternoon, I met with a contractor. We had plans. The very next day, I sent an email. The subject line said, Holloway Property Update. Attached was a PDF, not a long one, just 2 pages. Page 1 was proof of purchase. Page 2 was a photo of a sign we had already posted on the lawn. It read, Future Home of Sinkley HQ. Underneath, in small print, it said, powered by the name you thought was not worth the investment. I never got a reply, but a week later, someone sent me a photo. It was Dad standing outside the property, staring at the sign like it had personally betrayed him. Luke stood next to him in sunglasses, trying to act like it did not matter. But the caption on the photo said everything. Legacy secured. Just not yours. That night, I hosted a team dinner in the backyard of the house. We grilled steaks, passed around drinks, and toasted to our next big launch. As the sun dipped behind the roofline, I looked around at the people who had believed in me before the world noticed. No one mentioned Luke, or Dad, or old reputations, because we were not building a legacy for them. We were building something better, one that never needed their permission, their approval, or their name.